Hmm. It's been so long I don't know if I remember all the buttons. Hope I don't press that godforsaken skip button. That's all I care about. Oh wait, no, I pressed start. Oh no, 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 no! It's all wrong! Oh, what have I done? I quick saved. I don't think it matters. Oh, I'm off to a tremendous start. So good. I'm so good at this. There. Good. I picked up the figure and rubbed it against my cheeks. Seiratan looked happy. I feel like I read that part already. Like 3 weeks ago when I played this last. It's been so long.
今のところテストに出るからな。ちゃんとノート書いておけよ。今日はここまで。起立。礼。
The math teacher. What was their name again? Well, it didn't matter. Left the room and the school came to an end. School day came to an end. The entire school didn't come to an end. Just the day. The other students were all talking about where to go after school, or heading off to their clubs or teams. Most of them immediately got ready to go home. Normally, as soon as the last chime rings, I would put my things together and go home. But today, I stayed in my seat, trying my best not to look at any of the other students. Today, I was meeting Yua. Normally, a date with a girl would be a wicketic situation. What? Oh god, I don't remember which one opens the tips. Nope, that's not it. One of these gives me the menu. Nope, that's auto. Oh god. Nope. Nope, that's a quick save. There it is. Found it. Japanese net slang for hopeful and excited. Wicketic. I'm gonna trust them on that one. But for me, for today, it was just depressing. My nerves were all jittery, my stomach hurt. I'd never agreed to go anywhere with a girl, and I didn't know what to do. Would she even come? Maybe the whole thing yesterday was a prank, and she was watching me from the shadows and laughing, I thought. Unlocking bitter memories. In a way, that might be better than if she actually did come. Wait, did I even need to wait for her at all? Couldn't I just ditch her and go home? Could. Yeah, that was the way. She was in a different grade than me anyway. If I ditched her here, we'd never meet again. Not sure if that logic tracks. I made my decision and stood up. Hey, I forgot your name. Someone slapped me on the back, hard. I didn't need to turn around to see who it was. The only person in the class weird enough to talk to me was Misumi. That's right.
いつもならチャイムが鳴ると同時に消えるのによ。俺密かに匠の音速直帰って名付けてたんだぜ。もう帰るよ。誰か待ってるとか。え？
How did you know?
なんだよ、図星かよ。どうして？なんだかやけにそわそわしてたからな。教室の入り口をさっきから何度も気にしてるし。
He was perceptive. But I needed to be careful with what I said. Don't forget, Takumi. Your goal is to stand out at school as little as possible. You have to be like air itself.
別に誰も待ってないよ。そうか？だったら今の間はなんだよ。
Nothing helps you blend in quite like lying.
それは。
Crap. Misumi wasn't a bad guy, but he could be really annoying at times like this. Read the room, jerk.
西条くん。
My whole body froze. I turned toward the voice, feeling sheer terror. Yua was standing timidly at the door. Oh no. Thanks to Misumi, I'd lost my chance to run away.
おい、なんだりゃ、どういうことだ?
It might have been the first time I'd seen Misumi freak out like this. He wrapped an arm around my shoulder, pulled me in close, and looked me in the eye.
おい、タク、どういうことか説明しろよ。お前の彼女か。違うよ。
I told him 1,000 times that I didn't have any interest in 3D girls.
だったら何なんだよ。言っとくが、タクの姉ちゃんとかそういうオチは期待してねえからな。引きこもりのくせに何をどうやったらあんないい女と知り合えるんだ。昨日急に付きまとわれて。それはつまりあれか。
I mean,
逆難されたって
not wrong.
ことか。この。
He grabbed me by the jaw and shook me for a second, before finally letting me go.
そうか。世の中には物好きってのもいるんだな。けど、タクがまともな性癖を持ってたみたいで、少し安心したぜ。
That escalated quickly.
それに彼女とは別に何も。
I'm still not buying it.
そうかそうか。
She's up to
頑張
something.
れよ、タク。
I don't trust her. Misumi wasn't listening to me. He was all excited now and slapping my back way harder than before. Ugh, he was definitely teasing me.
安心しろって。お前の女を寝取ったりしねえから。だからそういう関係じゃ。
Meanwhile, she's like, I can hear everything you're saying.
ほら、さっさと行けよ。
Please stop talking about me like
お
that.
待ちかねみたいだぜ。
He pushed me in her direction, and I began to slowly walk forward. I guess I didn't get to run away after all. Okay.
迎えに来たの迷惑でした？
Oh my god. I can never get this in the right spot. Is that,
Yeah.
It sure as hell was. I looked back at Misumi, and he was grinning and giving me the finger. I couldn't tell if he was cheering me on or trying to start a fight. There was no point in trying to deal with him anymore, so I decided to just leave the school. Onward. To the collector's store or
すいま
whatever.
せん。昨日会ったばかりなのにこんなお願いをしてしまって。
いや。
I did remember that much. They were going to pre-order a figurine. I remembered that. I was really nervous. Me, leaving school with a girl like Ryaju? Like a popular kid. I thought this was a world I'd never have anything to do with. I never thought it would happen to me. But right now, there seemed to be an intense aura radiating from her. We were just walking side by side. Why did I feel so nervous? It's called social anxiety, sir. I still didn't know who she was or what she wanted. What would she want with a creepy otaku like me?
おとといの。は
い He's funny.
いや。
She started talking out of nowhere, so I got surprised and said something weird sounding. I mean, you really say anything, you just went, woo! She seemed to be nervous too. Her expression was tense. She was older than me, but actually quite innocent. It was pretty moe. Not that I could do much more than glance at her every so often. I was too embarrassed to look her in the eye. Relatable.
おとといのブラチュ見ましたよね。私一箇所だけいまいちよくわからないところがあったんですけど、すすぶくんがセイラちゃんのピンチに駆けつけてきて助けてくれますよね。でもどうしてすすむくんはセイラちゃんが危ないって分かったのかなって。
あれは先週の回に伏線があったんだ。セイラの携帯が鳴ってるシーンが一瞬だけ挿入されてて、着信表示で進むの名前が出てる。
そういえばそんなシーンありましたね。
山田はそういう細かい伏線をあちこちに貼るのが好きなんだ。キンゴルでも似たようなことをやってた。
山拓キンゴ
山拓っていうのはブラチューの監督の愛称だよ。で、山拓がブラチューの前に監督やってたアニメがキンゴル。
ル。へえ。じゃあ山拓さんって有名な監督さんなんですね。
まあ僕は好きな方かな。なんでかっていうと、
I wanted to know the reason. What? You can't just skip that? I started lecturing her on anime, and the next thing I knew, we were at animate. It's animate, yeah. We got in here much faster than I expected. It's just spelled like that, and it makes me think it's pronounced differently. It's just animate. It's clever, I think. I'd gotten really excited and talked way too much again. Yua was a great listener. Whenever I showed off some random piece of knowledge, she'd act really interested. I knew this whole thing was a trap, but I kept talking anyway. I'm so bad at speaking, and this had never happened before. It felt like chatting online. It was kind of weird.
なんだかドキドキしてきました。先に帰ったりしないでくださいね。
うん。
She went up to the clerk with an expression of intense nervousness on her face and ordered the Sarah post-awakening version figure. All I did was stand back and watch. I kept looking for a chance to run away, but she kept shooting nervous glances at me, and I couldn't move. Afterward, at her request, I showed her around the store. She was happy to find all kinds of things she might want to buy, but I didn't have the energy left to smile back at her. Yua came to school by train, so I was forced to go with her to Shinsen Station. She might look like an airhead, but she wasn't. Whenever she wanted something, she knew just how to make me give it to her. Black. She was a black character. What on earth does that mean? Person with a black-hearted personality, specifically someone who is friendly and kind on the surface, but in their heart harbors malice toward others. Certain people, mostly otaku, find this gap between surface personality and inner thoughts to be very moe. That could be very easily misconstrued, and I'm not touching it with a 10-foot pole. Moving on.
西条くんって携帯は持ってないんですか?
She suddenly asked me that just as we got to the station. A phone, huh? I shook my head, slightly sad.
持ってないんですか。それじゃ連絡が取れないですね。
連絡?
Contact me for what? Are you going to keep bugging me instead of leaving me alone?
でも西条くんパソコン持ってましたよね。私も持ってるからメールアドレスを交換しませんか？
どうして？
そのフィギュアの発売日に取りに行かなくちゃいけませんよね。その時にまた一緒に。まだ一人でアニメ8に行く勇気はないから。
I don't trust her yet, but I want to. She's endearing herself to me. She's tricking me just like she's tricking him. I'm not buying it. Don't trust it. Clever.
それに
Gotta close your heart to it. She was a clever one.
私西条くんと
I knew it, but I couldn't say no. If I did, I'd be the bad guy here.
もっと
3D girls were truly terrifying.
仲良く
Whoa, that
なりたい
face.
から。
Was it just that I wasn't used to talking to people, or was she just a master persuader? It felt like she wasn't going to go home until I gave her my email address, and yet she seemed nervous as she looked up at me from behind her glasses. For some reason, I felt my will to resist draining away. My skin felt clammy, and a cold chill was running down my spine, but I couldn't run away or say no. There was something strange about Yua. Something that wasn't normal. I mean, look at her. Look at that face. What makes you think that? I couldn't explain what, exactly, wasn't normal about her. Again, face. But she definitely wasn't normal. The next thing I knew, I'd written my email address on a scrap of notebook paper and handed it to her. She looked happy as she took it, then bowed and disappeared from the station. I stood there for a solid 10 minutes with a blank look on my face, like my soul had drained out of my body. Ah, home at last. What would you think about a girl like that? Says Nightheart. I don't know what to do. I mean, it feels like she's up to something. She has to be. Who's he talking to? I can't remember the name, but the one, yeah, that guy. Hey, are you listening? What's the name of this H game? Fair question. That night, I asked Grim about Yua. It felt like I wasn't getting anywhere on my own. But that was the answer I got. To be fair, this was the same reaction I had the first time I talked to her. I was an idiot to ask you in the first place. Wait, you're serious? Man, you're such a lucky bastard. I didn't think you had it in you. I thought you said you weren't even into 3D girls. He's not, that's the problem. It's not like that. Grim was reacting just like Misumi. Maybe the two of them were actually the same person. It's possible. Well, guys like you, Nightheart, you who've never dated a girl in your life, often quit being otaku the minute you get a GF. Your GFs... I hate shortened words like that. Anyways, not gonna like those 10-minute monologues about school swimsuits. I mean, really. Dude, you asked! I remember that. That was weird. He asked. You started it, man. I prefer competition swimsuits to school swimsuits. That's not the issue. What? Huh? I just heard Saratan's voice. I'd set that voice to play whenever I got an email. I looked over at my inbox and the sender's name was... Gosh, I wonder. Yua Kusunoki.
うわ、早速来た。
I got an email. Just now. Hooray! What in God's name is that supposed to be? I cannot for the life of me figure out what that series of symbols is supposed to represent. I assume it's some kind of face. I can't figure it out though. I know the upside down A is like usually like a nose. I don't see it. Moving on. An email from a 3D girl. I'd never gotten one before. I gulped and opened it. Hello, this is Yua... Are they going to say it, or do I have to actually read it? I'll just read it. Yua Kusunoki. Sorry for sending you an email out of the blue like this. It would make me very happy if you saved my email address in your contacts list. See, that one I get. It's like a little thing. It would make me... I already read that part. Sorry. That one I don't get... Oh my god, these faces. It drives me nuts. Sorry for bringing you along with me today, but it made me very happy. Maybe because I've never been to a store like that before. Or I think it was because I was with you, maybe. What time are you coming to school tomorrow? Oh, the reason I'm asking is I want to say hello in the morning, kinda. I hope... Can I there we go. I hope we run into each other tomorrow, even if it's just by chance. Bye. I'll send you another email later. Good night. All right. You could sense her elegance and femininity. Femininity. Oh my god. I swear I can read. Coming off the page, but the emojis also made her feel friendly and approachable. Because it makes it... To me, it makes her seem annoying and obnoxious, but maybe that's just me. But it was also because I was with you, Nishijo, and I want to say hello in the morning. Felt like she might be plotting something. Show me what it said. totally normal. Basically just a hello. Shut up and upload it. Upload. Do it. Hello? Hello? Oh, Lord. Oh, he's just typing the whole thing. I like how he typed out the whole thing, word for word. Oh, but he did censor her name. That's very considerate. Good thinking ahead on his part. Yeah, he even included all the dumb emojis. She didn't say his name. She was like, I think it was because I was with you, lol. Right? It doesn't matter. Grim was being obnoxious, so I decided to type in the whole message for him. Of course, I didn't type in our personal information. What is this? It feels like she's head over heels for you. Dying of fire, Nightheart. Help me out here, man. It's some kind of trap. Right. It's all a big conspiracy. You're overthinking things, aren't you? It sure looks like she's into you. You're almost at the good ending. But is it the true ending? I mean, this is impossible. I'm a creepy otaku. Why would a cute girl from the real world want to date me? Dude, you're just bragging now. Help me out here! Calm down, you're just overthinking things. She and you have a lot in common, right? There aren't many nice girls like that left. I knew that, but she was too nice. It was creepy. I mean, the stalker stuff at the start was a little much, but that just goes to show how much she likes you, right? She's an anime fan. Oh, God. She's an anime fan, right? She's like the ideal girlfriend. For an otaku, anyway. Get her to go along with you with all your weird-ass fantasies. That actually sounded pretty appealing. No. That was just what she wanted me to think. She came onto you. Be grateful. Not into 3D girls. Yeah, right. You want to date her really badly, right? This is your chance to stop being an otaku. You'll never get another chance like it. I'm sure of it. Wow. Stop being a wimp and go for it. Be like Nightheart, but in the real world. Go for it. If only I could, life would be so much easier. Talking to her today and the day before taught me that. It could be fun and make me happy, but it was also exhausting and a pain in the butt. This is... Am I reading my autobiography right now? Like, that's exactly... that's life. It's like, oh man, I want to go out and do the fun social things, but God, it's exhausting and makes me want to die. I wish I could be the type of person who can just do that. If it was that hard, I'd be better off living a peaceful, relaxing life with 2D girls. So I decided not to answer Yua's email. The fire was burning. Long tongues of flame danced within the incinerator. Inside it, a sailor uniform and several textbooks were being burnt to ash. Okay. A house in the foothills overlooking the Seto inland sea. In the distance, you could hear the whistles of the ships. A salt breeze gently shook the trees around the house. Despite her idyllic surroundings, the small girl in front of the incinerator, Kozue Orihara, was in a miserable state. Her eyes reflected the red light of the fire as she watched the sailor uniform and textbooks burn to ash in the incinerator. Until yesterday, that had been her uniform, and those had been her textbooks. She was the one who had put them in the incinerator, but she might have still felt some attachment to them because she kept staring at them. Suddenly, she winced in pain and put her hands tightly over her ears. She opened her mouth, but that was all she could do. She couldn't moan or cry. All she could do was gasp for breath. She kept shaking her head as if begging for something to stop. Then she collapsed, falling on the ground. She looked up, exhausted, at the sky. She stayed there, unmoving, for several minutes. And then, suddenly, she turned around. She was staring at the house's veranda. Veranda? The house was made up of wood and over 50 years old. Even though it was still daytime, much of the veranda was shrouded in deep shadow, leaving it in darkness. She slowly staggered up and walked toward it. Just then, her mother appeared, as if she'd been waiting.
あら、梢ちゃん。探してたのよ。もう荷物の整理はできたの？
Kozue nodded and sat on the veranda.
あさってにはもう、この家ともお別れなのね。
Her mother stood behind her and looked at the peaceful Seto Sea.
東京なんて行くの、梢ちゃんは初めてよね。いいお友達ができるといいわね。
Kozue didn't reply to her mother's kind words. She didn't shake her head or nod. She just stared sadly at the incinerator in the corner of the yard and the flames that still rose from it. Well, that was odd. It was a week after on a school day. As usual, I headed to school in a gloomy mood, staring down at my feet as I went. Fall was clearly at hand. The trees in Shoto Park were changing colors, and I was starting to feel cold in my short-sleeved shirt. Since I spent almost all my time in my room, it always felt strange when the seasons changed like this. It still felt like summer to me. I'd spent the whole week playing ESO. Grim kept asking about Yua, but I just ignored him. Yua hadn't sent me any more messages. Maybe she'd given up when I hadn't replied. I certainly hoped so. Whenever I talked to her, I always felt myself wavering. I started to feel hope. Oh, yeah, don't do that. Don't do that! But there was no point in a creepy otaku like me having hope. I'd lived my whole life without ever having hope fulfilled. That's why I'd lost interest in 3D girls. Please don't make me hope. Don't have any hopes for me. Suddenly, someone patted me on the shoulder from behind. I turned around, expecting to see Nanami or Misumi, but I was surprised. Her cheeks were a little flustered, and she was smiling at me. For some reason, she was out of breath.
後ろ姿が見えたから、もしかしたら西条くんかなって思って走って追いかけちゃいました。
Hadn't she given up? Did she still have hopes for me?
おはようございます、西条くん。やっと言えました。土日を含めて4日もかかってしまいましたけど。あ、先週メールを送ったんですけど、読んでもらってます。
See this? Yeah, I don't trust this. Don't trust it. This isn't. No. Bollocks. Bollocks, I say. By the time I'd realized I'd nodded, it was too late.
よかった。返事がなかったからてっきり届いていないかと思って何度か送り直そうとしたんですけど、我慢しておいて正解でした。
What did she want me to do? Was I supposed to fall in love with her, be her boyfriend, and then were we supposed to have be a happy, loving couple? Impossible. That kind of thing was for other people, not me. I wanted to do it, but there was no way I could. I still didn't understand why Yua liked me anyway. I couldn't trust her. It's all shady. It's shady as all hell. So it was just impossible. Like, putting aside his little inferiority complex, a very relatable inferiority complex. Yeah, no, it doesn't. I don't buy it. None of it.
西条くん、どうしたんですか？ずっと立ち止まってるので。
I started walking fast to leave her behind, but she jogged to catch up with me.
昨日西条くんのクラスに行ったんですけど、いませんでしたよね。もしかして風邪でもひいて休んでるんじゃないかと思って心配だったんです。でも元気そうでよかった。
Thoughts be gone!
たまにしか。
She's up to something!
はい。
僕、たまにしか学校来ない。みんなから引きこもりって思われてる。
You're disgusted, aren't you? You learned who I really am, and now you don't like me anymore, right? That's fine. I never expected anything in the first place. Go ahead, think I'm creepy, and then just leave me alone.
そうですか。でも今日は会えてよかったです。
I didn't know how to react to that. I found myself staring into her smile. Our eyes met, and then I quickly lowered my gaze. Why wasn't she treating me like she thought I was creepy?
っていうか、たまにでも学校に来てるなら、西条くんは引きこもりじゃないと思います。すいません。分かったようなこと言っちゃって。
でも苦痛だよ。
だとしたら偉いです。
That wasn't something I ever expected to hear. What was impressive about a loser like me? Yua smiled gently at me. It was a smile that could heal a wounded heart. That's how it felt to me.
だって西条くんは辛いのに頑張って学校に来ていますから。普通なら普通は来られないですよ。
I'm calling it now. She's the final villain. She's the final boss. Big bad. That absolutely. It's her.
でも僕はオタだしキモいし。
私西条くんの話を聞くの好きですよ。
What? Why was she telling me all this? Why did it feel so good? It felt like she was holding me in a warm embrace. Or like she was telling me that it was okay for me to be here. Maybe with her help, I could go back to being a normal person. Don't fall for it! You're falling into her trap! Don't do it!
大変予例ですよ。
Suddenly, I realized that there were barely any students left around us. They'd all got inside the school building.
西条くん、それじゃあ私失礼します。あ、今日の放課後時間ありますか？もしよかったら一緒に帰りましょう。
She spoke softly, her cheeks turning a little red.
放課後中庭で待ってます。もし気が向いたら来て
Oh, is she here?
ください。
Oops. I didn't
無理
know.
に来なくても全然平気ですから。
I suppose
失礼します。
maybe I'm a little biased. She bowed politely and headed off to the third year wing. Yeah, I suppose she is on the artwork with all the peoples, so. As I watched her go, I pinched my cheek. Just as I thought, this wasn't a dream or a delusion. I spent the whole day's worth of classes in a daze. I don't think I heard a single thing the teacher said. I just rested my chin on my hand and stared out at the autumn sky. Neither my classmates nor the teachers paid the slightest bit of attention to me. But Yua paid attention to me. She wasn't like the rest of those assholes. I sat there the whole day, thinking about her and indulging in one delusion over another. Before I knew it, school was over.
Yo, Taku. 今日もデートか？この前のメガネのことはうまくいってるんだろうな。おいおい、ニートだからって躊躇してんなよ。向こうがお前のこと気に入ってくれてんなら、付き合うか付き合わないかはともかく、やっちまうのが礼儀。
そんなことしないよ。
Oh boy.
おい、なんだよいきなり大声出して。
ユアとはそんなことしない。
は？お前まだ言ってんの？なんで最初から諦めるんだよ。そろそろ引きこもりから卒業しようぜ。
僕は引きこもりじゃない。
It's not what I meant anyway. Misumi only cared about sleeping with girls. He wouldn't understand. I ran past a confused-looking Misumi and quickly left the classroom. The fastest way to get to the courtyard from the second-year classrooms was to go across the connecting corridor to the third-year students' building and then head down the stairs. At least as far as I knew. I didn't come to school that often, so I didn't know what led where. I didn't even know where some places, like most of the special classrooms, were. So I was a little nervous when I went down the connecting corridor. There was a girl standing in the middle of the corridor, staring up at the sky. She had a very stern expression on her face. She didn't seem lost in thought or anything like that. She was clearly in a place that would block traffic, but she wasn't moving at all. Come on, I know you hear my footsteps getting closer. Get out of the way, I'm in a hurry. For some reason, she felt like a Dokyun. I needed to make sure not to get closer or let her notice me. Just as I tried to walk past this girl, who I decided to call Girl B.
Oi.
Uh-oh. Girl B has spoken. Crap, she talked to me. Was she going to mug me? Or was she going to say she didn't like my face, then take me to her group of Dokyun friends so they could beat me up? Please, no. What did I ever do to you? That is an intense expression. I glanced over at her to find she was glaring at me.
お前、誰だ?
I wasn't sure how to answer that. I was Takumi Nishijo, obviously, but I'd never met this girl, so there was no way she would know that. She must be planning to do something really terrible to me.
すいません。
I bowed quickly, being careful not to look at her, and then ran away at top speed. I ran down the staircase in the third-year wing and out the doors, then glanced behind me. The scary girl didn't seem to have followed me. Whew, the 3D world was an awful place. There were traps everywhere. I took a few deep breaths and looked around the courtyard. The courtyard was between the pool and the school building, and was really more of a corridor than a yard. Oh, God. Yeah. There were flower beds placed at regular intervals where purple flowers bloomed. What were those flowers called? I didn't know. Oh, hey. I saw Yua standing in front of one of the flower beds, staring down at it while she waited. She was really here. She was really waiting for me. Not for anybody else, just for me. Yua wasn't going to betray me. Maybe I could believe in her after all. Maybe she could save me. Yua looked up and noticed me. And then her eyes went wide in surprise. I stood there, looking away in embarrassment. I didn't know if it was okay to walk up to her or not. Why was she surprised? Did I mess up by coming? As I tried to figure out what to do, she ran up to me.
びっくりしました。
え？
西条くんが本当に来てくれるなんて。どうせ来てもらえないって諦めかけてたんです。でも待っててよかった。
I was surprised. She might have the same kind of mentality I did, the kind that was pessimistic about everything. But there was one big difference between Yua and me. I was pessimistic and didn't do anything. Yua was pessimistic but took action. That was something I really respected about her. I wanted to be that way too, I thought.
一緒に帰ってくれますか?
I nodded in response to her question. She and I headed for the school gate together. I felt kind of embarrassed. As we walked home, it felt like the other students were shooting me jealous glances. The more I started to notice people staring, the more I started to freeze up. I should have known that there was no way I could walk home with a girl. Why does he look familiar? I feel like I recognize that. Something about him reminds me of someone else. I passed by a teacher I didn't recognize. Actually, the only reason I thought they were a teacher was that they were wearing a suit. But did we have any teachers that young? I rarely come to school, so of course I didn't know who our teachers were or what they looked like. Sometimes I even forgot my homeroom teacher's face. The teacher in the suit looked around, seemingly lost before heading toward the school building.
どうしました?
I quickly shook my head and started walking alongside her again. The base was 10 minutes away from school, which was a bit farther than the train station at Shinsen Yua used to go home. But I guess I was walking her home instead of the other way around. Out of sheer habit, I walked us through Shoto Park. Cutting through it diagonally shaved a minute or so off the commute.
西条くんって朝よくこの公園でパンを食べてませんか？
That's right. That's the main reason I would trust her. The stalking thing. Like, why was she doing that? Like, there's something. Maybe she's not the ultimate villain, but she's something. Something's not right. How did she know? 'Cause she's been watching you, man.
やっぱりよく見かけたんです。でもいる時といない時があって、今日ようやくその謎が解けました。学校にたまにしか来ないからだったんですね。あ、別にそれがダメって言ってるわけじゃなくてですね。素朴な疑問だったので。
Yua suddenly stopped and looked over at the bench where I always ate breakfast. Right now it was empty.
なんだかここに座っているあなたの背中はすごく辛そうに見えて。
She suddenly leaned forward, just a little, and ran her fingers across the back of the bench. Like, bad or not, that's creepy. This is creepy.
何度も見かけるうちに。
Not in like an otaku creepy way, but like in an actual scary creepy way. The bench was right in front of the fence surrounding the lake. Since I always sat facing the lake, I didn't need to worry about anyone gazing at me. There was also a small watermill right next to it, which was another reason I liked it. It served to partially hide me.
ここ最近は姿を見かけなかった日は心配でご飯も喉を通らなかったりしてたんです。
Really? I hadn't noticed her watching me at all. Red flag.
バカみたいですよね。一度も話したこともない人の心配してるなんて。でも話しかける勇気もなかったので。
So that was why she was acting like a stalker at first. Not acting! Not acting. She wasn't a stalker. She was just really worried about me. Maybe. And also was definitely a stalker.
ちょっと座ってみてもいいですか？
That's what that is.
西条くんがどんな景色を見ていたのか、私も知りたいから。
I didn't really have a reason to say no. I nodded, still looking out at the lake. She put her bag up on the bench and then quietly sat down. Then she sat upright with good posture, looking at the lake. Maybe this is one of those things I'm just gonna have to let go. It's gonna be hard, but I think this might be one of those things I just have to say, it's a thing, moving on. I don't know. It was so quiet and so peaceful, she was right there with me. The soft wind made ripples on the water and gently rustled through her hair. Was this what it was like to have a normal life? It was just a normal day, a normal situation, so why did it feel like I was about to cry?
ここで朝食をとるのって気持ちよさそうですよね。
I watched her from the side as she quietly spoke. If we were in an H game, this would totally be when I asked her to be my girlfriend. She'd say yes, we'd kiss, and that would be the good ending. Depending on the route, maybe we'd even engage in some naughty outdoor fun.
私も今度やってみようかな。
She tilted her head to look up at me. Unable to speak, I turned my gaze toward her bag. As I stared at the 3 Garo Froggy straps on it, I cursed myself for being too lame to talk to a girl. Oh, is it time? Is it delusion time? Wait a second. Did I just see something? Oh boy. I want to go bad one. Let's get dark up in here. What was I looking at? Garo Froggy, a character popular with high school girls. I'd seen it somewhere before. Where? Yeah, it was the bag at the computer place. Yeah. Room 36. The room next to room 37, the one I always used it at cafe. The first day I'd met her, there had been someone in there looking at a new gen aggregator site. I'd seen her at the cafe, then panicked and rushed out. Did that mean the person in the room the next room over was... I looked down at her as she looked up at me. Her gaze from behind her glasses collided with mine. It was the first time our eyes had met since we'd known each other. She was still smiling, but it quickly turned into a look of uncertainty. What kind of look was on my face? I couldn't tell. I looked back at her bag, then at the straps. I thought I heard her gasp.
西条くん
There was a gust of wind. Yellow leaves blew off the trees and danced in the air. 100 thoughts were racing in my mind. Garo Froggy was popular, even if I couldn't understand why. There could be any number of people with 3 Garo Froggy straps on their bag. But... Room 36. Yua might have been sitting next to me then, but she'd never said a word about it. And then there were the new gen killings. Ugh. I'd totally forgotten about them, but I'd been a witness to one of the crimes. The terrible scene came flooding back to me, and... I'd seen the killer's face.
これですか？ゲロカエルンって言うんです。何人かの友達にもらっちゃって、気がついたら密になってまして。
She gave me a slightly forced smile. Then she reached out toward her bag and tried to take the straps off.
最近女子高生に大人気なんですよ。私はあんまり可愛いとは思わないんですけど。
Her hands were shaking a little. Maybe she was nervous because she couldn't get them off.
変だな。どうして外れないんでしょう。ちょっと待ってくださいね。西条くんにも見せてあげ。
Ooh. She finally yanked one off by force, knocking the bag off the bench. It hadn't been zipped up, so her notebooks and textbooks went spilling everywhere.
私ったら何をやってるんでしょう。
Just a few minutes ago, I would have thought the whole scene was very moe, but now all I could do was stare in shock because, by chance, one of the notebooks that fell to the ground had fallen open, and the small memos and newspaper clippings in it had scattered everywhere. It must have been some kind of scrapbook because all the clippings and memos had to do with one subject. I could see it clearly. New gen.
なんて
My voice was hoarse. She was hurriedly trying to pick up the clippings and notes and stuff them back into her bag. She stood up, holding it tightly to her chest. Her smile was gone, replaced with an awkward expression.
それは
She didn't answer me. Why won't you answer me? Come on, say something. If you don't answer, I'll think you're hiding something. And just when I was about to believe you, just when I thought you were going to be on my side, just when I was starting to believe that...
誰も信じちゃダメ。誰の言葉にも耳を傾けちゃダメ。
Shoulda listened to Sarah all along. Sarah was right all along. All 3D girls were garbage. Even Yua didn't like me. She was just trying to get close to me for some reason of her own. Maybe she was going to turn me over to the police. Maybe she was going to threaten me. This was awful. Just awful. Just when I was so close to forgetting all about that murder. The cops had never come to say anything. I'd convinced myself that I'd never have to deal with it again. I didn't want to get involved. What was Yua after? I turned around so I could run. But... Yua grabbed my wrist from behind.
逃げるの？
Her voice made me shudder. It was so cold that I thought I might freeze. She didn't seem anything like the girl I'd been talking to a moment ago. And... she was gripping my wrist with incredible strength. She was holding it so tightly that it was physically painful. I thought for a moment that she might crush my bones. It hurt so bad. I tried to shake her off, but she wouldn't let go. Instead, she pulled me closer, and I almost fell backwards.
逃げるの？
She whispered in an emotionless voice right behind me and right into my ear. I shivered and slowly turned around. And also she had a knife. Oh god! I thought that other face was creepy. The color in her eyes was insane.
逃がさないよ。騙してたことは謝るけど、お互い様だし。あなただって隠してたことあるよね。
Hiding something? There was only one thing I could think of. Somehow, for some reason, she knew that I'd witnessed the crucified corpse and the killer. That's why she'd approached me. She really was a clever one. Everything she said to me was a lie. That she'd gotten curious about me when she saw me for the first time. That she liked Bloodtoon. That she wanted to go buy a Sarah post-awakening version figure on the day it came out with me. When she'd smiled at something I'd said. When she said she wanted to get me to know me better. When she said she was worried that I didn't come to school. Even when she said I'd impressed her by coming to school. It was all lies. I clenched my fists in rage and anger. Damn it, damn it, damn it! Why was I ever willing to believe her?
本当はもっと時間をかけて調べたかったんだけど、バレちゃったからしょうがないよね。あなたに聞いてもらいたい話があるの。聞いてくれるよね。聞かないなんて言わないよね。あなたは聞くべきよ。聞いて。
I got it.
聞くでしょ。
Uh-huh.
聞かないなら。
Hey. If I won't listen, then what? She was like a totally different person now. That peaceful, easygoing manner she'd had was completely gone. Now she looked cold and unapproachable, with a terrible intensity about her. Her words were as cold as ice, as cold as death itself. The signs of weakness and helplessness she normally showed were nowhere to be found. I didn't want to hear those words. I tried to close my ears. But I couldn't. She still had my wrist in her grasp. She wasn't gripping it as tightly as before, but she still wouldn't let go. I couldn't move my hand. With her free hand, she reached into her bag and took out something metallic and showed it to me. I gasped in shock. My heart felt like it was about to leap out of my chest. My mind began to race. I had my free hand over my ear, but I let it drop, and I heard her voice, sounding slightly disappointed.
この十字架に見覚えあるよね。
Of course I did. I knew exactly what it was. It looked like a cross, but was actually a stake. Not many stakes had such an elaborate design. At least, I'd only seen some once before. Yeah. That night, scattered on the road. That night, pounded by the demon woman into the wall. That night, pinning the corpse to the wall.
やっぱり。
Yeah, that was pretty brutal.
知ってるのね。知ってるんでしょ。知ってるに決まってる。知らないなんて言わせな
Oh
い。
my god.
知ってなくちゃおかしい。知ってるよね。
Uh-huh.
知ってるよね。
I shook my head desperately. An awful sweat was forming on my brow. All I could do was try and wipe it off as I shook my head no.
これ。あなたの部屋にあったのよ。あなたの部屋。ベッドの下。床に落ちてた。落ちてたの。落としたよね。それとも捨てた？とにかく落ちてた。落ちてたの。
When did she search my room? The day we first met? When I hurt my leg and she walked me home? When she was staring with shining eyes and a cute face at the Sarah figure?
この杭。外国製のすごく珍しい杭なのよ。それと、ニュージェネ第3の事件で使われた杭と同じ。同じなの。同じよね。同じなのは間違いない。同じよ。遺体を壁に貼り付けにした杭と。同じ。
You think it's the same? It might be the same. I was sure of it. This girl thought I was behind the New Gen killings. She thought I was the murderer. Was she trying to be some kind of detective? Yua Kusunoki, teen detective. You know what I thought? Die, bitch. And I meant it too. They weren't just empty words. I mean, this stuff might have worked in an anime or a video game. But I knew that her theory had a fatal flaw. I'd seen the killer. I'd seen her with my own eyes, that demon. The girl whose name I didn't know. She wore a Sume uniform. She was close.
だから
She looked down and sighed softly. Her grip relaxed, and at last I was freed.
それ以上でもそれ以下でもないです。ただ、 あなたが知ってるかどうかを確かめたかっただけ。本当はまだ言うつもりじゃなかったですし。
What did she mean by yet?
それじゃあもう一つ確認させてください。あなたには予知能力がありますか？
What is ability to see the future before it happens? This is distinct from the ability to predict the future, where one lays out what they think will happen based off the information they have at hand. There is no scientific proof that it's possible to see the future. Different people manifest this ability in different ways. Some see the future in the form of flashbacks, others see it and others see it in prophetic dreams. Psychics, fortune tellers, and the ancient prophets are all said to possess this ability. Many con artists, however, claim to have it for the purposes of fraud. You might say all of them are con artists who claim to have it for the purposes of fraud.
Huh?
My jaw dropped. See the future? What the hell was she talking about? What did that have to do with the murder? I stood there confused as Yua reached into her bag and pulled out several full-color printouts.
予知能力があるって思わなきゃ納得できないような画像データをあなたが持っていたから。
The Guru photos that Shogun sent me. Why did Yua have them?
これ
あなたはどうして
She's
友人
Shogun!
第3の事件の再現画像を持っているんですか？しかもこの画像が流出したのは事件の前日です。あなたの使った PC にキャッシュが残ってました。
Yeah, that makes more sense.
違う
I got those photos from some guy named Shogun that I'd never even met before that day. I didn't make them. They should still be in my download history. I know. I know. I could show that to Yua. Wait, where did she get these? How did she know they were still in my computer's cache? When she came to my room, she wasn't there long enough to search my computer.
まさか君が将軍か
Was she trying to set me up? Was Yua behind this whole thing? Was she one of the new gen killers trying to use me as a scapegoat to distract the police from the truth?
助けて
This wasn't fair. Why me? Because I'm a creepy loser? Because I don't have any friends? Yua just shook her head silently.
その画像はアットカフェルーム37の PC から拾ったんです。あなたの PC もできれば調べたかったんですけど、その機会はさすがにありませんでした。
The room next to room 37, the one I always use at cafe, she really did think she was some kind of detective. She just looked the slightest bit sorry as she stared at me. For just a single second, she looked like the old Yua. She kept that expression on her face as she rustled through the bag again. This time, she took out a sheet with printed text on it and offered it to me. I had an awful premonition. The logical part of my mind told me I shouldn't look. But I had to. If I didn't find some way to resist, they pinned it on me.
それがあなたのすべてです。
Everything I was? Did she steal all my private information? Was she a hacker? My heart pounded as I looked at the printout, but instead of my private information, it was just a chat log.
Huh?
It was a log of Nightheart and Shogun. I remember that.
そのログ変ですよね。
え
What's strange? It was just a normal chat log. I remembered the conversation I had with Shogun. I'm trying to hold on. I want to find out what's strange. I want to see if I can figure it out before they tell me. The timestamps? They're like way later. Goes from like Sunday 3 o'clock to like Monday 19. I don't remember how long that conversation was though, so maybe I don't know. Oh.
ナイトハルトと将軍の
Oh. Yeah, one of them's just sending links. I don't.
発言時間が全然噛み合ってないんです。
Oh, it is the timestamps. Yeah, I'm a smarty. I'm able to notice very obvious things. Hooray. Huh? What was this? What was going on?
そこにあるナイトハルトは西条君。発言時間は9月28日の午前3時だ。そして翌日、あなたはアットカフェに行ってます。西条君がアットカフェに行くのは学校帰りと決まってる。そして学校に行くのは週に 2.5 回。あなたのクラスメートから聞いたんですけど、先週あなたが学校に来た日は月曜日、水曜日、木曜日。先週の月曜日は9月29日。将軍の発言時間と同じ日です。
What? What was she talking about? Is she implying that he's Shogun? It's like an alt account?
ルーム37の PC のチャットログを調べさせてもらいました。そこから分かったことは。
She paused for just a moment, before looking right at me and delivering a cruel truth.
あなた一人の自作自演。
Don't look at me.
将軍は
Don't look at me.
あなた自身。
何も見たくない。何も聞きたくない。時間は一定じゃない。記憶には矛盾がある。視界にはエラーがある。地球は回ってない。これはきっとゲームなんだ。
I turned on my computer and took a bite out of a fish sausage. Are we still... Is this still part of the thing? Did we come back to reality? We came back to reality, right? Because it went like CRT. So we're back in reality. That was weird. That felt like weirdly poignant. And like... Anyways, back to reality.
僕は
Fish sausage time.
僕じゃない。
The Seirutan wallpaper came up on the monitor.
僕がいるべき世界は
I booted up ESO without the slightest hesitation.
ここじゃないんだ。
All right, chapter 2. Did I okay. I have a lot of questions, and I'm not even sure what those questions are. I feel like my head is just full of a bunch of question marks, but with no actual questions. Beep beep. Anybody going on the field trip, get on. Takumi Nishijo lay on the tatami mat, a colored pencil in his hand. This time it was yellow. Just a few minutes ago, it had been red. He was happily scribbling with his pencil across the whole of his open sketchbook. Takumi liked to draw. Even during classes, he was always scribbling something in the corner of his notebook. The TV was turned on, showing the morning news. For a fourth grader like him, though the news was boring, he didn't look at it at all. Beep beep. You can't bring more than 300 yen for snacks. Okay. He was drawing a yellow bus and pretending he was the bus driver. This is adorable, by the way. The bus is full, so off we go. Whoosh! He envisioned the scene in his head as he put it under the page. It wasn't uncommon for him to get too excited and let his pencil go off the sketchbook and onto the tatami mat. Oh yeah, I see it. It's got... Oh, this is adorable. Whenever that happened, his little sister Nanami would yell, "Hey, don't mess up the mat." She was a little brat, and he didn't care. He kept drawing away. When it came time to draw the passengers on the bus, he suddenly stopped. And then he ripped the sketchbook up. Yesterday, the day before he was supposed to go on the class's fall field trip, he'd suddenly been told by his parents that he couldn't go. He'd been looking forward to it for a long time. He'd been excited the whole day. So when his parents told him, he refused to accept it. He cried and said he was going to go no matter what, but it didn't matter. No matter what he said, his parents wouldn't listen. "We're saying this for your sake. It's impossible for you." That's all they would say. So he hid under his covers and got mad. So mad he thought he might tear his blanket apart. He hated his parents from the bottom of his heart. That's how important, how critical the field trip was to little 4th grade Takumi. Everybody else got to go, and he didn't. From his perspective, it was totally unfair. In his mind, there were 2 worlds, a lonely world where he was the only resident, and a fun world where everyone else got to be. He hated his teacher and his classmate for going without him, and he hated his parents for telling him that he couldn't go. It wasn't long before that hatred boiled over. He bit his lip and so hard it drew blood, and began to mutter a curse over and over. I wish nobody got to go. The next morning, the phone started ringing really early. His mom would pick it up and answer it, seemingly shaken by something. She set it down, and a little later it would ring again. Takumi couldn't sleep at all. It was past 9 a.m. Nanami was sitting on the cushion reading manga. She said, "I'll stay home from school with you," the day before, so there she was. His dad had gone into work and was nowhere to be seen. His mom was so busy answering the phone that she hadn't made breakfast. Today, he didn't need to go to school. Glumly, he began to draw in his sketchbook. But it did nothing to help assuage his anger, and just when he'd ripped it up in frustration,
あれこのバス
there was a note of worry in Nanami's voice. He thought she was talking about his picture, but her eyes were glued to the TV set. Is there an accident on the field trip? Suddenly, she called out for their mom, who was still talking on the phone. Takumi looked disinterestedly over at the TV. It was showing a collapsed bridge on the highway. Only a small 50-meter section of the bridge had collapsed. A bus had been traveling right over the bridge at the time, and had fallen through the hole. It was the bus Takumi was supposed to have been on. It was the one his classmates were all on. In a single instant, Takumi was able to envision almost everything that had happened. His classmates were all there. Some were crying, some had faces covered in blood. One was being carried off in a stretcher. A reporter was examining the accident with a stern expression on his face, but Takumi couldn't understand what he was talking about.
タクちゃん大変よ
His mom was standing in the room's doorway, holding the phone in her hand and looking deathly pale.
遠足のバスが高速道路で事故に遭っちゃったんだって
それ今テレビでやってる
Was their mom psychic or something?
それで斉藤先生が
Dead. For some reason, Takumi was sure of it, because everything he was seeing on the TV was just like the scene he'd envisioned last night in his frustration and anger. In his mind, there was only a single thought, a strange uncertainty that he had the ability to see the future. Did he? Okay. Does he have like some kind of weird reality manipulation power? That'd be bananas. But like, they said he couldn't go, so he envisioned everybody on the bus getting in an accident, and then they got in an accident. I feel like it's more than just seeing the future, because that's what he wanted, you know. He remembered a TV program that he'd seen years ago about whether psychic powers were real or not. There was a psychic on the show who could see the future and put their powers to incredible use during the test the show had given. At the time, it was a huge deal. Is this James Randi? In the test, 12 items were put into 12 boxes, numbered 1 to 12. This sounds a lot like James Randi. And they had to guess which one would be put in which. The psychic would be in another room before anything happened and make their guesses there. Afterward, the show's staff would put the items into boxes, and the results would be checked. Astonishingly, the psychic was 90% accurate. Okay, it's not James Randi because it's bollocks. Amazing the rest of the cast. It's also fiction, but Takumi had been watching the show, and he'd made his own predictions as well. Every single one was right. Of course, he'd never told anybody this. But that's why now, he thought he'd foretold the crash unfolding on the screen. I thought maybe one of the parents foresaw the crash, and that's why they said he couldn't go, but it's starting to seem like he not only foresaw the crash, but like made the crash. They said over half the class was injured.
なんてこと
His mother tried to reach down and pick him up, but he slid past her and crawled to the corner of the room.
でも本当によかったわ。
She whispered in a hollow voice, her gaze wandering around the room.
今日タキちゃんを休ませておいて本当によかった。
Takumi felt like he was about to throw up. It was all rotten, he thought. What good was seeing the future? In that moment, he felt his heart turn cold. For a while, he didn't talk to anyone. He became completely silent. He didn't say a single word to a single person. His parents were already overprotective, but this only made it worse. He gradually started to find them ridiculous and began to keep up his silent act deliberately. That was his way of getting back at his parents, he thought. He was so quiet that they took him to a psychiatrist at a general hospital. He was diagnosed with PTSD. Of course, he didn't have PTSD, so he never took the medicine they gave him. He just pretended to take it. His parents never picked up on the act, and even when he saw how worried and miserable they looked, he didn't feel the slightest bit guilty. Well, that was a lot. That was a lot of information I'm not sure what to do with. It all felt like a lie. The whole world was filled with fiction. It was filled with evil. Evil that was out to get me.
いつもあなたが使っているチャットルームへログインして
That
自分で調べてみて
that didn't actually happen, right? Like that, or wait, did he make that up? Did I make that happen with the red? I thought that was just, I thought that was like where he like sees a fictional scene and then it comes back to reality. Did that actually happen? I'm so
私の言っていることが
confused.
間違っていない
I'm so
わかるはず
lost.
です。それと私が言ったことは全部本心です。これだけは信じて。
After her bizarre speech, she added that last sentence and then left. Of course, I couldn't believe her. How could I believe her when she'd lied to me? The everything that I was, that she'd shown me, was something I refused to accept no matter what. I wanted to believe there was no way I could be Shogun. But from the timestamps on the chat log, it was clear that the conversation didn't make sense.
僕は無遊病なの。
At the time that Shogun had sent these messages, I hadn't been asleep. I had been at iCafe, sure, but I hadn't been asleep. I couldn't have been sleepwalking. Then why didn't I have any memories at all of writing these comments as Shogun? Was my body under somebody else's control? The very idea was ridiculous. I decided what I needed to escape from all the lies was some good old ESO, my other fictional world. In ESO, everything was a lie. It was just a game after all. But in Basilard, I could be Nightheart, a godlike being. If only the lies and fictions could be like this, I could accept that reality. I wanted to be here forever. What's wrong with that? Or maybe ESO's world was the real one, and this one was the fake. This one was the game. Takumi Nishijo was just a fictional character, and my true identity was Nightheart.
ねえ、ナイトハルト。
This kid's starting to crack, I think. Don't blame him. I don't even know what's going on right now. I called out to the paladin on screen. Am I controlling you, or are you controlling me? Are you the real person and I'm the avatar? What if the world I'm in is a game? If that was the case, it would explain everything. If somebody was staring at me right now, just like how I was staring at Nightheart, is this getting really meta all of a sudden? It's about to get really, really meta. Whose eyes are those? Mine, I think. I think he's talking about me. The answer to that question would be the player controlling me. If that was the case, then I'd wish they'd stop sucking at the game so much. I mean, I guess it's not that kind of game, so he's not talking about me. I'm not really controlling him, I'm just advancing text. But Navadar doesn't get to complain. That's really funny, though. Man, if real life is a video game, I wish the person playing me didn't suck so hard. It's pretty funny. It would explain how Shogun and I could be the same person. It's like, it was like with Lizelot. Lizelot and Nightheart couldn't exist in Basilard at the same time. They both had the same player, me. Maybe in the same way, Takumi Nishijo and Shogun couldn't both exist in this world at the same time. Or maybe it was like a bug. Speaking of bugs, these strange women appearing and the murder cases were all bugs too. The images Shogun sent me flashed through my mind, and I winced. I shook my head desperately. I wanted to run away from everything. If there is a player controlling me, then please reset the game. Just start over from character creation. If it sent me the title screen, okay, that'd be so funny if it just like actually sent you the title screen. The waiting room at the university hospital was filled to overflowing with old people waiting for their exams. Nothing had changed since I'd first come here several years ago. It was as if time itself had stopped. Everyone wore a gloomy expression. Between that and the stench of disinfectant, the air was heavy and stale. 5 minutes in this room was enough to make you want to kill yourself. I didn't like hospitals. I want to know who does like hospitals. Are there people out there who are like, oh yeah, I get to go to the hospital. Hell yeah, my favorite. That's my favorite time of the day. I get to go to the hospital. The lobbies were filled with people. Once you went down a hallway, it felt like you were completely alone. They'd always really scared me. It felt like the hallways were full of the stench of death. It always seemed to me that death was the true face of a hospital. And if you went further down the hallways, you'd find even more terrifying, awful secrets. So to tell the truth, I didn't want to come. There was something I had to know, so I had no choice but to sit here waiting for my exam. Even while I was playing ESO, the words Yua had said kept spinning through my mind, and I couldn't concentrate at all. I ended up staying awake all night, imagining all kinds of terrible things, and started to get really scared of there being something wrong with me. At last, I decided to go to a hospital so I could get a doctor to tell me that I was completely normal. I wanted to prove that Yua was the crazy one, not me. I was used to coming to the psych ward of this hospital. When the lady at the front desk had asked me if it was my first time here, I'd nodded without thinking about it, but it wasn't my first time at all. Ever since the bus accident, my parents had taken me here on a regular basis. When I got to middle school, my doctor told me I was completely cured and I'd stopped going. It had been about 4.5 years since I'd last come here. Oh, hello. Okay, so now I thought this was just like, hey, have a fun little scene that, isn't real. Does this change actual reality? I guess maybe sometimes. The first doctor to look at me was an old man who was supposedly an authority in his field, but he'd only talked to me in the first few times before handing me off to one of his students. I'm gonna go green this time. We'll see how green goes. Of course, his student wasn't that much younger either. If anything, he'd looked older than the first one. That doctor, Dr. Takashina, had said something to me that I'd remembered last night.
ここは病気や怪我だけじゃなくて心にも効く病院なんだよ
I didn't like the hospital, but he was really nice and seemed like a really good guy. Not that this had stopped me. I'd kept up my act of deceiving the adults. It was Dr. Takashina who had seen through my deception, though, and had given me an official diagnosis of completely cured.
あの人に調べてもらえれば
What would he say if he knew I'd grown up to be a creepy otaku? No, he probably didn't even remember me. Alright, we got the green mode. What's it gonna be? Yeah, it didn't do this. I just realized it didn't do that last time. It didn't do that, and it didn't go all like wobbly. So yeah, that last part actually happened. This is not real, because you can tell because it's all woobly. That's what I was. Okay, so that's like the key. So sometimes they're real, Would things be different if I had picked the green one? I'm trying to figure. Maybe if I had picked the green, it would have done a fantasy, a delusion, right? And he wouldn't have realized her true nature. But because I picked the red one, it was gonna be a delusion, but it turned out to just confirm the reality of the situation. Something like that, maybe? I don't know. I'm just trying to figure this out. But yeah, this is so I'm fairly confident that this right now is not real because it's all. It wasn't long at all before I was called into the exam room. I thought I'd be asked to wait longer, but that wasn't the case at all. What about all those people in the lobby? Maybe they were all fakes, put there by the hospital to make it look busy. It was a different exam room than the one I'd been seen in 4 years ago, but I recognized how he welcomed me when I came in.
Yeah, Nishijo-kun.
He stood up with a friendly smile and offered me a hand. I realized he wanted a handshake, and I hurriedly shook it back.
また君に会えて嬉しいよ。いや、嬉しいというのは変かな。君にしてみれば、またここに来るというのは辛いことなわけだからね。
It had been 4 years, but the doctor was still really friendly. I'd been feeling a little nervous, but I quickly calmed down.
それで、今日はどうしたんだい?
He motioned for me to sit down, and I did. Maybe I felt a little too at ease, because I told him everything that had happened, and everything that might have happened. I wasn't used to talking to people, so I kept tripping over my own words, but he never pushed me. He just nodded and listened. Of course, I told him about Yua and the demon girl. Everything. It occurred to me that that might be dangerous, but he was the only one I could rely on right now.
結論から先に言おうか。
After I finished, he thought for a while before opening his mouth.
君は正常だよ。何の問題もない。
本当。
Oh, well, isn't that wonderful?
もちろん。
Those were the words I wanted to hear more than anything. I'd come all this way to the hospital just to hear them. I'd been terrified he was going to say there was something wrong with me, but now I was glad I'd come.
むしろ、おかしいのはその楠木さんという女性だね。
He's saying exactly what he wanted to hear. That's...
西条くんの話だけで判断するのは難しいが、おそらくその女性は精神的な障害を患っているだろう。今後、君に危険を及ぼすような行動に出る可能
This is
性が
definitely something doctors say.
すぐに警察に通報しよう。
The police. Yeah, that might be the safest option. There was something wrong with Yua. She was crazy. Just the thought of her coming after me again was enough to make me shiver.
もちろん、僕も責任を持って君を保護するつもりだ。
He gazed firmly at me, gave me a friendly pat on the shoulder, then he even gave me his business card. It had his cell phone number written on it.
何か問題が起きたらいつでも連絡をくれて構わないよ。24時間いつでも君のところに飛んでいくからね。
いいんですか？
当たり前だよ。僕は君の主治医なんだから。
I was almost ready to cry. I was so happy he was my doctor. There weren't many like him these days.
悪魔女のことについても通報した方が良さそうだね。西条くん、君の見たその女がニュージェネの真犯人で間違いないよ。これはものすごい目撃証言だ。
He was getting a little excited, but he wasn't letting it show in his voice. His tone was as calm as ever.
事件は西条くんのおかげで解決
Jesus
だ。
soul. You're the hero, Takumi!
君は渋谷のヒーローだ
Oh
よ
my。god, he actually said that! I was joking!
僕はこの瞬間に立ち会えて実
That's
に
so
光
funny.
栄に思う。
I was a hero? This wasn't ESO. A person like me couldn't be a hero. But just imagining it made me grin. Oh my god, the victory music. Da-na-na-na-na-na-na-na. All the middle school girls and high school girls and college girls and office ladies in Shibuya all screaming my name. I would be a celebrity. I could be on TV, but I didn't like being in front of people, so I would start a venture company instead. Then I'd make a ton of money as a famous CEO. I'd have a bunch of pretty girls as secretaries in my own personal harem. Of course, they'd all be totally in love with me. I'd have a high-rise condo in Roppongi and lots of cute maids at my service, like my own personal maid cafes. And of course, they'd be willing to serve me at night too. Just kidding, just kidding. Oh my god. Yeah.
まさに勝ち組。
Oh lord. Suddenly, I realized I was still sitting on the sofa in the lobby. Started looking around the room, unsure of what just happened. There was an old, hunched-up woman sitting right next to me. Her eyes were buried so deep in her wrinkles that I couldn't tell if she was awake or not. I looked up at the clock above the reception counter and saw that I'd been in the lobby for over an hour. Was that just a dream? Had I fallen asleep while I was waiting since I hadn't slept at all last night? If only it had been real. I felt so disappointed. No secretary harem today. In the end, I waited another 2 hours before they finally called my name. When I went into the exam room, it was the same as I'd seen in my dream. I thought for a minute I was back in the dream again. Dr. Takashina looked just like he had in my dream too. Maybe he just hadn't changed much over the past 4 years. But he didn't stand up and didn't ask to shake my hand.
今日はどうしました？
And he didn't seem happy to see me again, like in my dream.
西条です。
ん？ああ、これはご丁寧に。高階です。はじめまして。
He bowed to me. I couldn't say anything. Nice to meet you. That's what he had just said. He'd forgotten me. It made sense. It had been 4 years after all. But I thought that he of all people would remember me. I'd kind of had that hope, whether it was fair or not. When that hope was shattered, it just made me sadder. It felt like it didn't matter. When that hope was shattered, it made me sadder. I felt like it didn't matter. Or it felt like I didn't matter. That was sweet slam poem talking to me. That was pretty sick. He looked in my eye as he spoke, but I looked away.
無遊病かどうか調べてほしいと書いてあるが、何かあったのかな？
That's right. That's what I'd said on the form, but it didn't matter now. He didn't even remember me.
別にいいじゃん。先生が覚えてようが覚えてなかろうが関係ないっしょ。最初の目的を忘れちゃダメ。
Oh, right. I hadn't come here to see Dr. Takashina. I'd come to prove that I was normal. Seeing him again was just a bonus. What did it matter if you forgot me? If Seira-tan hadn't reminded me, I might have broken down right there. Whew.
自分でも知らないうちに外に出かけててパソコンで文章打っててそれを全く覚えてないなんてありえますか？
おお。
知り合いからそう指摘されて混乱しちゃって。
その知り合いの人が冗談を言っているっていう可能性はあると思うかい？
Yua's eyes had been dead serious. She didn't look like she was teasing me or anything. If nothing else, she certainly seemed to believe what she was saying.
わかりません。
なるほど。ちなみに、その知り合いとはどういう関係だろう？恋人？
はあ？
What was this guy talking about? What did that have to do with anything?
いや、言い方が悪かったかな。じゃあ言い直そう。
その知り合いの人は君が意識もないまま歩き回っているのを実際に目撃したのかな。
Oh, was that what he meant? I shook my head.
じゃあ証拠はないわけだ。
I shook my head again.
そいつ探偵気取りっていろいろ証拠を突きつけてきて。
そういうことか。ちなみにこれまでにも無遊病の兆候はあったかい？
いえ。
朝目覚めたらいつものベッドじゃなくて違う場所で寝てたっていうことは過去に一度でもあった？
いえ。
I did that once. It's really weird.
じゃあその知り合いに言われたのが初めてっていうことだね。
And it never happened again. I nodded weakly before forcing myself to speak.
僕寝てないんです。
もしかして怖いのかな。でもそんなに深刻になる必要はないよ。
いや、その。
That wasn't it. That wasn't what I wanted to say. But I wasn't sure how to explain it, and I couldn't get my thoughts together in my head. I lost my chance to speak. He scribbled something in his chart before spinning around to turn away from me, then leaned forward toward the back of the exam room.
葉月くん、ちょっと。
はい。
A young nurse came over. The doctor showed her my chart and said something softly to her. Then she quickly went back further into the room. What was that about? He turned to face me again. Then, in a gentle tone, he explained to me what sleepwalking was. When someone falls asleep, he said, first they enter REM sleep, and then non-REM sleep. REM sleep was when the body was asleep, but the brain was close to fully awake. Non-REM sleep was a deeper sleep, when the brain also rested.
無遊病はノンレム睡眠の時に起きやすいって言われてる。脳が通常の活動をしていないから普通の受け答えとかは成立しにくいけど、ちゃんと返事もするし、階段などを踏み外さずに上り下りすることだってできる。原因としては精神的なストレスを抱えてる時になりやすいんだ。子供に多い症状だけど成人でもよくある症状なんだよ。これで分かっただろ？深刻になることはないって言った意味が。
But I wasn't sleeping. I wasn't sleeping, and yet I was still doing things I didn't remember. The whole time I'd been supposedly typing into that chat as Shogun in room 37, I thought I'd been playing ESO. Was that what you called sleepwalking? I wanted to ask, but the doctor just kept talking.
無遊病かどうかを調べる方法としてはいくつかある。一番手っ取り早いのはここのベッドで寝てもらうことだね。ただ特定条件じゃないと発生しない場合もあるかもしれない。例えば自分のベッドじゃないとダメとか。意識がない状態で出歩くにしても目的もなくふらふらと歩き続けるのか、それとも何らかの脅迫観念があってそれに影響されて何らかの一連の目的を持って出歩いているのか。それに君の精神状態についても特定の条件下じゃないとダメかもしれない。自宅のベッドの上ならリラックスできるけど、ここじゃリラックスのしようがないわけだ。どうする？とりあえず寝ていってみるかい？
It wouldn't hurt to try. I could make sure I wasn't sleepwalking, and then ask him the question I'd come to ask. The nurse, Hazuki, led me to a bed in the back. It wasn't meant for sleeping, so it was hard and uncomfortable. Still, it was better than the sofa I was used to sleeping on. This is crazy. The idea that people can just... I think I'm gonna sleep now. That's insane to me. The fact... Especially, like, on an uncomfortable... I have trouble sleeping in my own bed on a regular basis. You can't just be like, it's like the middle of the day. I think I'm just gonna sleep. How do you do that? How is that possible?
3時間くらいしたら起こしに来ますから。
It would take me 3 hours to even attempt to fall asleep. How do you... What is this madness? This nurse was really cute. She is really cute. I like the hair. Her hair is super cute. I like the ponytail. The braided ponytail is super cute. I lay on the bed, glancing at her while trying to make sure our eyes didn't meet. She had a somewhat young, helpless-looking face, and the air of someone whose life wasn't really working out the way they wanted it to. Why he's drawing a lot of conclusions here. Still, she went about her work quickly and steadily. She felt like one of those girls from an old H game. One set in a hospital with lots of rape. Wow, okay.
できるだけ目は離さないようにしていますので、安心して眠ってくださいね。
In other words, she'd be watching to make sure I didn't get up and start walking around.
それでは、ごゆっくり。
Just one extra thing that would make it hard. Like, I already have trouble sleeping. If the bed is uncomfortable, also someone's watching me. Good. Sweet dreams. She smiled a little before closing the curtains and leaving. Surrounded by the white curtains, I let out a deep breath. I could hear lots of things. The voice of the doctor as he examined his patients, the other nurses walking around, even the doors that opened and closed. It was pretty hard to relax. Could I really sleep like this? Impossible. Actually impossible. I tried to close my eyes just to see if it would work. Unless you're like heavily sedated or something. Like that's insane. The second I did, the Goro images that Shogun sent and the sight of the corpse that nailed to the wall came flooding back to me. I forced myself to think of Seiratan instead. Guide me to dreamland, Seiratan. Oh boy. I'm curious what like evil psychotic things Sarah's gonna say if I do this. So let's go. Is she gonna like turn off full on evil? Inside my delusion, she was happily bouncing up and down. Next, she whispered to me in a sweet voice. Oh, well, why are we here then? Let's go. Question answered. Dork. Sarah, you're so cute. Sarah. Sarah was my ideal wife, after all. No girl could ever be better than her. 3D? Who cares about 3D? I couldn't wait to go home. Sarah would be waiting for me with a big smile and a welcome home. Just wait, Seiratan. I'll be coming for you. Yeah, it's going all woobly. All right, not real. Now I have to watch for that. I have to make sure it goes all woobly. Otherwise, apparently it's real life. She opened the door and was met with a smiling doctor. She ignored the question and looked around the room. The exam room wasn't very big. There was a blank medical chart on the desk next to another one covered in writing. The writing was in a language that wasn't Japanese. They called her a demon. Everybody did. Oh god. Oh no, the demon! The demon lady! Everybody did. Even her parents. Whether she had been a demon from the start or became one because everyone called her that anyway, that didn't matter anymore. In the past month, she'd killed 8 people. The public called her mad, but from her perspective, that number wasn't anything special at all. She was a demon after all.
何か気になりますか? もし気になるものがあるなら
Oh god, she's gonna kill
言っ
this
て
guy.
ください。
No,
ど
kill
かし
him.
ますから。
He was a good doctor. He cared about making his patients comfortable. She smiled, opened her bag, and slowly took out a 24-centimeter knife with a willow leaf blade on it.
それとも もっと広い部屋に帰
The doctor's expression froze at the sight of the knife. I'm gonna be honest, I thought the bad delusion was gonna be something about, like, I thought it was gonna be like Sarah berating him or something. I didn't realize it was gonna be murder lady showing up. The doctor's expression froze at the sight of the knife. She smiled gently at the sight of his fear. This doctor would be the knife. This wasn't part of her original plan, but there was no harm in adding one more. She put her bag on the ground and silently walked over to the doctor with long strides before leaping and stabbing with the knife. The knife slid right past the ribs into the heart. That one strike was enough to kill. The body slumped forward toward her, then fell to the ground. Now it was an unmoving thing. She withdrew her knife and knocked the thing away with her elbow. No, not the nurse! Just as the corpse fell forward, its white jacket stained with crimson, she heard the scream of a nurse who had come to investigate the ruckus. She slashed at the nurse with the knife, stepping on the doctor's body to get closer. A spray of fresh blood. It wasn't a fatal wound, but a jagged slash had been carved into the kind-looking nurse's face. The nurse screamed and fell to the ground. That was an awful scream, by the way. Ugh. Did not like that. Hands over the wound, blood pouring through her fingers. She ignored them and walked toward the exam room. The 10th victim wouldn't be that nurse. It needed to be something special. 10 was a big number. 2 whole digits. It had to be her original target. The other patients and nurses were already running and screaming. The whole place was in an uproar. But none of their voices reached her ears. She looked around, certain that he was somewhere nearby. Her eyes fell on the curtain. The curtain surrounded a tiny space, the size of a small walk-in closet. There was probably a bed inside. There you are. She shook with joy. Warmth spread just below her abdomen at the thought of finally being able to kill him. She slowly approached the curtain, but instead of opening it, she slashed through it with her knife. When she peered through the hole she'd made, she saw a bed, just as she thought. He was lying on it. Found you. When she saw him... Oh. Stop that. She couldn't control herself anymore. She flung open the curtains and stood by the bed. He was asleep, a pained expression on his face. Sneeze. Gently, she wrapped her finger in his hair, softly stroking his head. That's comfortable. He didn't wake up. She held the knife, blade downward. She raised her hand high. She aimed for his heart. A single strike, just like the doctor. That would be enough to kill him. With a look of ecstasy on her face, she brought down the weapon. Ugh. Yeah, good luck sleeping with that in your head. I leapt up, only to find myself still on the bed. My heart was pounding fast. I looked at my chest. There was no stab wound there. No blood either. I was unharmed. I looked around. The curtain was closed. It hadn't been slashed with any knife. I slowly put a hand up to the curtain. For a moment, I had a delusion that if I opened it, I'd see Hazuki and the doctor lying on the ground covered in blood.
夢だよな。
But I didn't have the courage to open the curtain. What if I did and saw an ocean of blood? What if the demon girl was there, waiting with a knife? I was too scared to move. And then... The curtain was flung open right in front of me. I screamed and fell off the bed.
大丈夫ですか?
Does it say Shino Maduki? Shino Maduki. I believe that's what that says. Haduki? It might be Haduki. Can't tell if that's an M or an H. Anyways, I looked up. Hazuki was... Oh, Hazuki. Said that already. I have the memory of a goldfish. was looking down at me with wide eyes. There was no blood on her white outfit, and no gaping wound on her face.
ごめんなさい。驚かせてしまって。
That's not a Z. Like, am I crazy, or does her name tag say Shino Haduki? Haduki. With a D. That's a D, right? That's not a Z. I'm not crazy, I swear. It's right there. I don't know. Alright. Moving on.
起きているとは思わなかったので。
いえ。
I looked so pathetic. I slowly staggered to my feet, eyes pointed firmly at the ground. My heart was still pounding hard. I was so glad it was just a dream, though. It was like something out of a horror movie.
本当に大丈夫？
She looked at me, worried. I was so embarrassed that I couldn't look up. The most I could do was nod a few times.
少しうなされていたみたいでしたけど。
怖い夢を見て。
さあ。
What time is it? How long was I asleep? I asked Hazuki. Surprisingly, I'd been out for 3 whole hours. I must have been more tired than I thought.
でも、無遊病の症状は結局出ませんでしたよ。
Her tone was reassuring.
まあ、今日はたまたま症状が出なかっただけかもしれないから、無遊病でないっていう断定はできないですけど。
No, I'm not a sleepwalker. I needed to ask the question I came here for. But I didn't see the doctor. Hazuki offered me a sheet of paper. I looked at it. There were various questions for me to answer.
それはあなたの心理状態を把握するためのチェックシートです。心理テストのようなものね。それを書いてくれたら今日はもう帰っていいって先生が。
先生は？
ごめんなさい。ずっと診察が続いてて。来週まで様子を見て、まだ改善が見られないようならもう一度来てくださいって。
To be fair, he wasn't my personal physician or anything like that. He'd probably just given Hazuki, his nurse, instructions for me. But then what was the point of even coming to this hospital? I wanted to ask about the awful possibility that I was being controlled by somebody who wasn't me. But Hazuki looked so apologetic that I didn't have the courage to demand to see the doctor. I decided to just fill out the worksheet she'd given me. I'd write out the symptoms I was experiencing on the back, I decided. Then I could come back next week to talk to him again.
チェックシートは質問に対してイエスかノーかだけを答える簡単なものですから。当てはまる点があったらイエスにチェックしてくださいね。今後の西條さんの治療に対する参考にしますから、じっくり考えて答えてください。
Hazuki was kind enough to give me a full explanation. Some of the questions on the test were weird, not the sorts of things you'd expect to be asked at a hospital. It was almost like one of those online personality quizzes. What would answering these questions tell them? Hazuki was staring at me. She wasn't getting ready to leave. It didn't seem like she just had nothing better to do. She was observing me. No, watching over me. Being watched made me nervous. What is with everybody staring at this kid? So it was hard to think about the questions, but I suppose that was just a nurse's job. I decided to just forget it and fill out the sheet. She pulls off a mask. It's me, Yua! Haha! Oh, am I actually answering these? Oh, God. Oh, jeez. Oh, Lord. Oh, my God. Okay, you need to talk to someone. I'm gonna answer these as though it's me. You need to talk to someone. Do you prefer text instead of call? Absolutely not. Do you sometimes have tinnitus? Yep. Have you ever felt someone's eyes on you and turned around? See, I was gonna answer these as myself, but you know what? Yeah, I'm gonna answer these as myself because I know the answer to this would be yes if it were him, but I'm gonna answer these for myself. So no, I have not had that. Do stationary objects sometimes seem to be moving toward you? Nope. Have you ever had a premonition that turned out to be right? Nope. Have you ever checked a digital clock and seen the same numbers repeat? I don't know what that means, honestly. Like, have you ever looked at the clock and at 3:33? I don't understand the question. Same numbers repeat. Whatever. Skipping it. Cried within the last month. Yep. Can you masturbate just using your imagination? Well, this is about to get really real. Nope. Can you stay focused on just one mental image while masturbating? Oh my god, what is this? Sure? Can you fantasize about something with your eyes open? Yeah. Does the front of an automobile ever look like a face? Sure. Do you have difficulty going to the bathroom after watching a horror movie? Nope. Not a fan of haunted houses? I like how these are phrased. Not a fan of haunted houses? No, not really. When you start reading a book, do you lose track of time and immerse yourself in it? Yeah, that's happened. I mean, not reading, but literally anything else. Yeah. I don't read many books, if we're being completely honest. Do you think aliens are real? Do I think they're real? Yes. Do I think they've visited us? No. You look at your horoscope. Is it always right? Nope. Do you get motion sickness easily? Nope. Do you think God exists? Nope. Do you have a sixth sense? I mean, we have several senses, but the particular type, the sixth sense they're referring to, probably not. You sleep. Do you dream in full color? Yep. You're asleep. Do you ever understand that you're dreaming? I have had lucid dreams once or twice, yes. Have you experienced partial memory loss? Yeah. Do you have trouble making eye contact with others? Absolutely. Does the sight of a lemon make your mouth full of saliva? No. When other people yawn, do you yawn too? Sometimes, yeah. What a bizarre... I can see why he was confused. This is a bizarre series of questions. Yeah, I answered those as me and not as him, so... I don't know how this is going to affect the story progression. Or if it is going to affect the story progression at all. I don't know. Maybe that was completely irrelevant. When I checked off the last few questions, Hazuki spoke to me before I had a chance to say anything to her. I'd been really embarrassed, having her watch me the whole time. Maybe my face had been red. I quietly handed over the worksheet, trying not to look at her face. I hadn't had time to write my symptoms on the back.
それでは待合室でお待ちください。お薬が出てますから。
薬?
I was getting some kind of prescription? The doctor hadn't said a word about that.
ええ、先生の指示で。弱い精神安定剤です。ぐっすり眠れるようになるし、副作用などもありませんよ。
Woohoo! Thanks, Doc! I was appreciative, but also the thought of waiting in that lobby again made me feel miserable. By the time I got back to Shibuya, it was evening. The hospital itself was in Shibuya Ward, but the closest station was Yoyogi. Taking the train was the fastest way to get there and back. The Yamanote line was as crowded as ever, though, and riding just two stations was enough to make me feel exhausted. I didn't think I was up for getting on another train, so I decided to walk from Shibuya Station to the base. There were just too many people at the stations. I hated crowds. They always made me feel like I was going to pass out. I didn't want to spend any more time there than I had to, so I quickly tried to get across Scramble Crossing. That area was so packed it was hard to even walk in a straight line. If you didn't keep a steady forward pace, you'd run into the people walking beside you or get hit from behind. There were also people blocking your path, trying to hand you packs of tissues with ads on them. They'd even force them into your pocket. Wow. That's awful. I ignored the first one, but the second one was a cute lady, so I took some from her. These tissue people were just the worst. They shouldn't have been allowed to stand in the middle of the sidewalk like that. I took the tissues anyway, though, since they were free. I looked at the tissues I'd been given. This pack came with a small flyer with white text on a red background. It was a pretty weird color combination, kind of spooky. It wasn't a combination you saw often, that much I was sure of. I read the flyer as I walked along. Oh. There's a shortage of type B blood. There's currently a serious shortage of type B blood in Shibuya. We may no longer be able to deliver blood to all the patients that need it, and people may die. Without your blood donation, he will not survive? Please come to the blood donation center, something, Ino Kashira line building. He will not survive? So this is... Is this for someone specific? That's... Okay. It was a flyer for blood donation service. As I looked at it, I thought back to the worksheet I'd been given at the hospital. I hadn't seen anything like it when I'd gone there 4 years ago. Maybe it was some kind of new kind of diagnostic that had only gotten popular for the last few years. But still, I felt like I'd seen it before. Deja vu, again. It felt like that was happening all the time lately. It was really creepy when your body and mind refused to do what you wanted them to do. So I tried to dig through my memories to find out what was going on with this deja vu. My mother used to take me to the hospital about once a week. No matter what they asked, I'd never respond. I'd just move my head up and down or side to side. At first, they saw me in a normal exam room, but when I showed no signs of recovery, they started sending me someplace different. The other place was some kind of counseling room. It had a sofa and lots of stuffed animals, and seemed to have been decorated with the aim of putting the patient at ease. Dr. Takashina never blamed anybody. He just kept trying to make me better. He was the only one who figured out that I could speak, but just didn't want to say anything. My mother would always talk to me in a deliberately chipper voice. Dr. Takashina would always welcome me with a bright smile. The nurses were always kind too, and it felt to me like there had always been somebody else in that room. Oh, I don't know how I missed it the first time. The dude, the CIA agent in the back? Yeah, are you talking about him? Right, he was always wearing a dark black suit, and it was a weird outfit to see at a hospital. So we got nurse, doctor, mom, I assume, and Agent Smith back there. He was just as quiet as I was. I don't think I ever heard him talk. I never did figure out who he was. He didn't feel like a doctor. Is this just like a big Matrix thing? He was talking earlier about what if real life was a game, and now we got Agent Smith in the background. Is he Neo? Is Takumi Neo? He didn't feel like a doctor. He always just stood off to the side, looking out the window. I always called him Mr. Nozomi. He'd never actually given me his name, though.
Nozomi.
The man in the suit always wore a small badge. It read Nozomi. It looked like a logo of some kind, so it probably wasn't a name tag. Yeah, the worksheet had the Nozomi logo on it too. No wonder I thought I'd seen it somewhere before. I felt a little better now that the mystery was solved. What was Nozomi, though? It was clearly the name of some kind of company. You could Google it. Or sorry, what is the... What is the Google in this world? It's like, Goodle or something like that. You could Goodle it. Hey! Oh, sorry, Deloodle. My bad. I'm gonna call it. Because I'm hungry. And I want a food. So, we'll go number 2. Click me. Alright. Alright, I'm out. Bye.